Hi, I'm John Byrne with Poets and Quants, back here at the Kelley School of Business on the campus of Indiana University in Bloomington on a beautiful sunny day. This is the third and our final panel discussion on the online MBA experience. Now we're going to talk chronologically about something that everyone's concerned about. What are the career outcomes? What can you expect when you get an online MBA, and how does what you get differ from a traditional residential program? So to talk about that, we have the legendary Eric Johnson, who's Executive Director and Grand Poobah of the whole career development scene on the graduate level at the Kelley School. And Eric has really pioneered this. He's also an executive coach and quite a good one at that. So I'm really happy to have you here.
Well, thank you, John.
And we have two more students to join us. To my immediate left, we have Michael Bauman. And Mike is merchandising leader at KitchenAid for Whirlpool.
That's right. Thanks for having me, John.
And that is actually a recent promotion, right?
That's right. So within about a year ago, working with Eric and his team, they helped make it all happen.
Oh, I like to hear that, Eric. See, I know you work magic all the time.
I have a good team, John. We'll talk more about it. But, Mike and Divya both had some great coaches.
And then, of course, we have Divya, and she's a solution architect. That must mean you have an engineering background at Rockwell Automation.
I do, yes.
And she loves her job there. And you have a longer way to go. You're going to graduate in 2021.
That's correct.
And Michael, you're graduating this year.
That's right, in November.
Okay. So let's start again with what caused you to get an online MBA, because I'm sure that's directly tied in with what your career aspirations were. Why get one?
Sure. So, I had very specific career goals and things that I wanted to do. My background's in engineering, and I knew that an MBA would enable me to develop some of the competencies that I didn't necessarily get with my engineering undergraduate degree. So, doing my homework, I looked at several different part-time and online MBA programs, and a big part of that was I was very happy at Whirlpool. I still am very happy at Whirlpool. And the opportunity cost of leaving Whirlpool and going to a full-time MBA program or something that didn't allow the flexibility that an online MBA program offers, it didn't necessarily fit with my career goals and the trajectory that I was on with Whirlpool.
Right.
Right.
And Divya, how about for you?
Very similar story, similar to Michael. I've always been very career-oriented, and I found a real home at Rockwell Automation. I've been there since I was an intern, and I was not willing to give that up. So similar to Eric, similar to Michael, my decision was based on, the opportunity cost of leaving for a full-time program was not something I was willing to eat. And so I went the online route in my search. Similar story, I'm an electrical engineer by trade. I've been in very technical-oriented positions, but with a pivot towards business administration in that I was in product management and now I'm in technical sales. So the language and the credibility I would gain with a better understanding of how to administer business in a global marketplace was imperative, and I knew I needed a formal education for that.
So flexibility, opportunity costs, two key reasons to do an online program over a full-time residential program. Eric, I think that a lot of people would assume if you do an online MBA, your expectations about career outcomes are going to be different, and maybe even more important, maybe the going in assumption is you're not going to get a whole lot of career guidance in an online MBA program compared to a residential program. Is that true?
It's a true assumption. It's not a factual statement.
Okay.
I think we do have, what's I've enjoyed about working with the Kelley Direct online MBA population is that there are a very wide variety of career outcomes that each individual is looking for. I think you've got two, what I would consider high potential talent, possible future executive type individuals. And the type of development and coaching and guidance that they need is very different than someone who is trying to make a fairly significant transition from an engineer to, say, product management at a different company in a different industry.
Right.
Kelley Direct has a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds, and so they do have a variety of expectations that come along with that. And it is interesting, I've noticed that in a lot of our intake discussions, there are some assumptions that there aren't a lot of career resources available, and nothing could be further from the truth. We treat the Kelley Direct Online MBA with great importance. We'll talk more about it, I'm sure, but we have dedicated staff, dedicated courses, dedicated resources, because we think it's one of the more important expectations that we deliver on within our office. So we take it very seriously.
How early do you intervene in the online MBA program with incoming students?
Yeah, before day one. Yeah,
Really? Before
yeah.
day one?
Well, I think as you listen to Michael and listen to Divya, they begin the process of evaluating an MBA with a career change in mind. Both happen to be within their firm, but there's a long-term career outcome associated with choosing to get the MBA. So for us, we actually begin this process with a series of assessments and even now intake appointments before the first on-campus in residency or before the first class even begins.
Wow.
Because it's really important for us to understand, are you somebody who's looking to be what we would call a career navigator, which is someone who's trying to move up within their organization, or are you somebody who's looking to be a bit more of a career switcher, in which case you may be looking to jump from, consumer packaged goods company A to tech company B. We actually provide tailored curriculum depending on the type of career that you want to have. So for us, the earlier we know what your intentions are, the more we can create a custom and relevant experience for you. So yeah, it all begins pretty much from the time you're admitted and you want to engage well through and beyond graduation.
And I would think in general, an online MBA is better for the navigator than a career switcher. Am I wrong?
It's hard to say. I think both can be really successful within an online MBA. I think what's important for someone who's looking to make a fairly significant career switch is that they understand it takes more than just academics and coaching to make that happen. It also takes some level of experiential learning, sort of build up the evidence that says, I can make this jump into something that I don't have a lot of experience in.
Right.
So what I like about the Kelley Direct program, for instance, is if I've got somebody who is wanting to move, say, from a finance role into something that's maybe more of a product management role, I would certainly encourage them to engage in the agile type trips where they actually get some hands-on opportunity to work with businesses, to do some consulting, to build up some expertise. I think the Kelley Direct clubs have got some really neat experiences, and I know the marketing club is going up to Chicago to do some company visits, and I think that builds a language and an experience set that allows somebody to make a switch. It's those opportunities maybe aren't as in your face as with an in-residence program, which is designed to provide, a switcher with experience to make that jump.
Sure.
But they're available for those who want to do it. And part of our job as coaches is to sort of evaluate, wow, Michael, where you're at and where you want to go. Here's some things you might need to do. And then we want to work with the academic advising team to say, listen, we've talked with Michael. Here's the type of stuff we think he ought to engage in. Can you work with him to figure out what that looks like for his academic path? So
Right.
It's a very holistic approach to career management.
And in both your cases, it sounds like you're classic MBA students in this sense. You grew up in a narrow specialty, a discipline, and you want to broaden your perspective and broaden your responsibilities, in your cases, in your current companies. So the MBA is the perfect vehicle to broaden your perspective and get increased responsibility outside of the discipline that you know so well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. My aspiration at Rockwell Automation was always to be very broad, so that, as they say, a mile wide and an inch deep, but I've always required more depth based on my technical background. So to get that mile wide, there is only that much career transitioning you can do within the
Right.
company and prove validity that you can do the job. You might be capable, but are you going to be credible? And so to, for example, have an operations management class under my belt and maybe do an elective in that area could allow me to pivot into operations someday, which is my aspiration. But there isn't a whole lot of work experience that lends credibility to me being able to do that. So
Sure.
absolutely true. Yeah.
Now, Michael, did you avail yourself of the coaching in the Kelley Direct program?
So I've had an outstanding experience with Eric and his team and Stephanie Gray, who's my career coach. And Eric mentioned it a little bit, but it starts off with those initial assessments. So not only is it a chance for them to really get to know you, but it's a chance for you to reflect a little bit and get to know yourself.
So describe one of the assessments. Is it like an aptitude thing, or what is it?
So I would break it into two aspects, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here. But first is
Myers-Briggs.
Not close.
Okay, okay.
Kiersey. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Kiersey temperament.
Okay.
So that's a standard personality type test that
Yes.
describes your behaviors, how you work, and how you work with others. And just the simple act of looking at those results can raise your awareness, your self-awareness to
Right.
the next level.
Yeah.
And when you work with Eric and his team, you really dissect that, right? And so the second aspect would be like the intake meetings. So I filled out a form about myself, about my aspirations, and sometimes all it really takes is putting pen to paper, thinking about what you want to do long term. And one thing I will say about the coaching is that what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it, and what you get out of it is usually tenfold. So if you take the time to regularly take advantage of this opportunity, the results can be very powerful.
So when was the first time you actually met with the coach? And was it on Skype or Zoom, or was it in person?
The first time was in person at Kelley Connect Week.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it was probably day 2 of my MBA journey.
And Stephanie had your assessments in front of her and the form you filled out, and she knew you better than you know yourself already, right?
Not quite. Not quite. But there's two things that are very consistent with all of my meetings I've had with Stephanie, and the first meeting doesn't stray from this. The first is I'm always going to be challenged. So meaning I might
I know
talk
that about Eric.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah.
I might talk about an experience that I had at work with a coworker, and Stephanie is not afraid to push back and say, "Why did you do that?" And then that gives me the opportunity to reflect on my thought process, my behaviors, and how I was perceiving myself, but also how the other people I was working with perceived me.
Boy, that's valuable to get third-party assessment from someone who's not invested in any way, and to get it in the context of a program, so you're not even going to have to pay for it as an extra.
You nailed it.
Okay.
So that's a big thing, and she doesn't care if Whirlpool makes a profit. She cares about how I'm leading my team and how I can
Yeah.
grow professionally.
Right.
So that was the first thing. The first thing is I'm always challenged. And the second thing is I always have an actionable thing that I can take away from our coaching. So sometimes it's as simple as having coffee with a coworker. Other times it might be, charting out my 5-year career plan, and talking about what experiences I need to really take the next step.
Wow. Divya, did you have an experience with a coach in the Kelley program?
I
as well?
have, yes. At the most recent Kelley Connect Week that I attended, I met with my coach, Terry, who is an incredible woman. She's like a machine. She listens so carefully, so intently, without interrupting, letting you ramble, about your current situation, your current predicament, and comes back with such insightful questions that make you think about the way you want yourself perceived in the workplace for whatever you are trying to accomplish, whether it's representing yourself and your capability appropriately in an interview or in a salary negotiation, as I've recently been talking with her about. And she really makes you reflect on exactly those topics. What is your career plan? Do you have one that starts at the very end that you can map backwards from and put it into a very simple mathematical formula to whoever is consuming this information, whether or not what is being offered to you is fair and is going to enable the company for their future. So it's been wonderful, very similar experience.
I love this because, I actually believe that one of the less appreciated, unanticipated events of most MBA programs, and I'm even talking residential, is a professional development component. You really get the chance to evolve and to be introspective about who you are, who you want to be, and what it will take. That is even rarer that it happens in an online MBA program. But that's always been an important part of the Kelley experience, no matter what the program is. There's something called me Inc.
Correct.
And you have a version of that in Kelley Direct. Want to talk a little bit about what that version looks like and feels like?
Yeah, so we have, I think that's fair, John. We have a philosophy at Kelley that believes strongly in the personal side of development, right? Not just the academic, but the professional, right? The personal, like who do you want to be at Whirlpool or who do you want to be at Rockwell, but who do you want to be? Like, what are you trying to achieve for yourself, and what role does your career play in your life? And I think that philosophy is truly program independent. And I think it's worth noting, since you brought up Me Inc., that the online MBA, career services, and the in-residence MBA, and the specialty masters, all of that is part of my shop. So we don't carve up our programs and treat them like silos. Our graduate career services is graduate career services, and all the coaches talk to each other. We work together. We implement that philosophy seamlessly across our different programs, while also having coaches who are dedicated to specific programs. So we're philosophically consistent, but tailored in our approach to any individual student. What we have really kind of a 5-phase approach to career development for our online MBA program that does look like Me Inc., which for those who aren't familiar with what that is, it's just for the in-residence students, it's a 2-week deep dive into your skills, your interests, your values, your vision, how you make meaning of situations, and how you want to chart your own career path going forward. With the online program, we've talked about a few of the components. It begins with the personal inventory, which is, again, it's personality, it's skills, it's values. It helps us answer the question, where are you running? And I like to say everybody at Kelley is running. You're either running from your last job or you're running to your next job. And it's a spectrum. And a lot of folks are just trying to get out of the job that they're in. And part of that initial inventory is understanding why. Like, is it a motivation issue, an appreciation issue, a skills mismatch, the wrong supervisor, team dynamics? Where the personality assessment helps us out is it's a filter by which people make meaning of situations. So if your personality is not one that's generally oriented towards detail-oriented work, and you're a CPA, it's not hard to understand why you're finding some job dissatisfaction. And that can help us figure out what are the types of jobs we probably want to avoid if you're interested in making a transition, because there are similar demands in these other places. So that inventory is kind of step number one. It allows us to understand, where are you running? Step number two is that intake appointment where they go through and they meet with the coach and they begin to develop a personalized career plan. And then step number three is to really engage with the curriculum and the resources that we provide. We do have a lot of online resources for our Kelley Direct students, but we also don't make the assumption that our students only want to engage online. So we're now offering 3 dedicated professional development courses through our school, and the expectation is that everybody takes at least one. We have a 6-week course to help somebody who's a job seeker get market ready. We have a 6-week course in how to manage your career internally if you're a navigator and looking to move up. And we have a 6-week course on how to prepare for a consulting interview that was built by a senior manager at Deloitte. And so based on the type of job that you're trying to go after, we've got an option for you. And then the follow-up to that is to begin to execute against your career plan, and then hopefully, as in Divya's case, begin to, the process of salary negotiation and evaluating an offer so that you can hit the ground running. And each of those components is delivered to a student when they're ready versus like dictated, here's your schedule. It's, Michael, you tell me where are you at, and I'll help figure out what the next step is for you. So we really do try to design something that meets a student where they're at.
And when you get a coach like Stephanie or Terry, you keep that coach throughout the program, or what happens?
I've kept working with Stephanie throughout the whole program.
So
now
you're
I think
developing a real relationship with her.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think it's 2 years now that we've been working together and have gotten to know each other really well. Where it's coming to the point where I can tell where she's going to challenge me before she even does.
And same for you, Divya?
I have very similar aspirations for Terry. I've only begun working with her this year, but as you know, I'm going to be graduating a long time from now.
Yes.
So it would be an honor to continue working with a woman of her capability.
That's great. In a typical, residential MBA program, there are things like seminars and sessions about different industries and what the expectations are for MBAs, maybe even receptions by companies. Is there any kind of equivalent in the online space?
Yeah. So we do work with our faculty to try to provide some of the industry level and functional level education. So the example, the Kelley Marketing Club's trip to Chicago is something that's
right.
actually being done in conjunction with a corporate relations person in our office to help not only figure out what are the right companies to go to, but how do you build a portfolio of experiences that are going to give the broadest view of what marketing looks like. So we do engage in that. We have historically run some virtual networking sessions via a couple different platforms that we've tried, where we have, we've done this in consulting and we've done this in marketing, where we've got alum and recruiters from a variety of different firms. We'll actually run an online networking platform, which is actually really cool. And that works really well, but there isn't a whole lot of substitute for that face-to-face where possible. John, you and I have talked a little bit about our business development team in the past. We've got 4 regional people, one in LA, one in Boston, one in Atlanta, and one here in Bloomington that covers the Midwest. And just this week, we've been talking about plans for 10 nationwide events where we would bring in recruiters, alumni, Kelley Direct students, in-resident students on their internship or maybe who just started, to try to execute some face-to-face regional-based networking to not only support our online students, but to facilitate interactions for alums and across the portfolio. And I think that's something that's truly unique as well, that tries to close the gap on the face-to-face knowledge or the face-to-face relationship building that I think is so important. So yeah, we are trying to deliver on that, but in a way that I think meets the online program where it's
Sure.
at, right? Which
Yeah.
you can't just bring a bunch of companies to Bloomington and say, get here if you can. You have to actually go to where the students are at.
And I know your team of 4 new people in these different locations, it's been all in place since November only,
Yes.
although 2 were hired the previous year.
Correct.
You had some really impressive numbers on how many new jobs they were able to scout for MBAs, both full-time and online.
Yeah, so in just the last 4 months alone, this team has generated more than 800 new jobs for more than 188 new companies that we did not have any previous relationships for. And they are compensated like a traditional sales force, so they have a bonus structure in place. And the number one driver of their bonus incentive is jobs for the MBA population, which is in resident and online both. And what they would tell you is that based on the size of the online program, but also the year-round availability of an online student, we've actually been generating jobs at a 2-to-1 clip that would be a better fit for a Kelley Direct student than for an in-resident student. Because, not that Michael wants, I don't think Whirlpool wants Michael to leave anytime soon.
And
but
Rockwell doesn't
want Divya to
Divya.
leave. But
No
in
way.
theory, they could start a new job February 1. They could start a new job October 1, right? It's an online student is really in the experienced hire marketplace, which means we don't need jobs that only start in June and July and August.
Right.
So that year-round calendar flexibility is something that really helps us a lot with our business development efforts. Right? If I go to a company, take your pick, right, Apple, and they say, man, we need somebody, it's October, and they're like, we need somebody now. We can't wait until June. My team can say, well, we actually have a population of students who could do that. In addition to some alums that we can do some outreach to, we have students who be qualified for this right now. Let us get that job posting in front of them. We'll collect some resumes for you. So it's actually been, it's improved our ability to deliver on the corporate customer experience
Yeah.
as well as meet our students where they're at.
And I'm just going to make as an aside, there are other schools that may have planted someone, particularly in Silicon Valley.
Sure.
But often they are involved in corralling alumni and doing a lot of different things. The 4 people you now have in the field are exclusively devoted to cultivating relationships and scouting opportunities for MBAs.
Yeah, they are 100% compensated and incented on
That kind of
career
blows my
outcomes.
mind.
Yeah, me too. Me too. But it's been fantastic, and I think it's really a testament to our dean's belief in the value of career services and the value of supporting the entire portfolio and not just a select number of programs. So, yeah.
While we've talked a lot about career outcomes of the program, the truth is you get immediate outcomes through the program. We covered a little bit of this in the previous discussion, but I'm wondering how the 2 of you have been able to take something that you learned in the class, immediately apply it in the job, and maybe impress a supervisor, a boss, a colleague that's already made a difference in your career.
Sure. So I can start. So this is actually something that happened very recently, and I was in the pricing class while we were evaluating a price increase for all of our products. So our trade customers probably weren't very happy with that situation, but it worked out really well for the KitchenAid and Whirlpool team. So while I was in that class, I would take the class in the evening, and I would learn how to build a new pricing model, and I would apply it the very next day. With regards to elasticities of demand, with regards to break even and sensitivity analysis, and it was a capability that we didn't necessarily have at the
Wow.
time. So it was something that the very next day I was able to directly apply.
Well, that's got to impress your boss.
I think so.
Did you get more than a pat on the back for that?
We'll have to talk to him about that.
Okay.
I'll tell him you said I need a raise.
Divya, how about you?
Many things. So my first class was economics, which gave me a really good formal understanding of the things I had come to understand about the macro and micro space and the global marketplace that we're in that applied to the product management job I was in at the time. I soon, after taking that very first class, transitioned into a new job function at Rockwell as a technical salesperson, and I was interacting with manufacturers all day long. You know, it's one of the most insightful meetings you can have with a customer, with a panel of representatives from Rockwell and our distributor partners, is to do a plant tour. And so we'd walk their plant environment and take notes. You know, why are you writing that down on a clipboard? Why isn't there a digital platform for this? You know, operational efficiency questions that I didn't think about, never having an operations background. I learned a lot in operations management about tack time, about a number of other very specific parameters that I didn't learn about in engineering school.
yeah.
So it gave me a language and a credibility with the customer, and actually an understanding that could drive their desired business outcome.
Yeah.
So that was truly tremendous. And the third class, I would say, was very insightful for me. Has been finance thus far, simply because it will help me pivot into the next career move I'm aspiring to.
Now, you are going to be the lucky beneficiary of a major change in the curriculum here that doubles the number of electives you can take. You're graduating this year,
Yeah.
so you're not going to be able to take advantage of the curriculum review. But what I want to ask both of you is, to what extent have you been able to tailor or customize the online MBA experience to your own aspirations and goals? So why don't we take you first, Michael, on that?
Sure. So when you start, you really lay that foundation of the core courses, which, you know, economics, finance, operations, and that truly does build a foundation and helps you build a little bit of confidence in yourself and build up some competency within, you know, the commercial business realm for someone like myself coming from engineering. So with that, I found a passion for economics. So I've tailored many of my electives to econometrics, price modeling, and pricing courses. And I still have 2 electives left. So I think I'm looking forward to taking advantage of those in the next couple months here. But I think because I was able to understand that foundation, it really helped direct me to where I wanted to use my electives.
Right. And you're going to even have more flexibility to take more. So
I
can
would.
see you doing really deep dives in finance, right?
Absolutely, yes. So the first thing that the program has enabled me from a flexibility standpoint is something I joke about is enabling me to have a work-school balance, that there's no life for a few years, but the return on investment is significant, I believe. So from that perspective, I've been able to take 1 class at a time as opposed to 2 as a part-time MBA student, which has been really great to enable me to keep my sanity and maintain my work drive. And the second aspect of that is that I'm finally at the point now where I can take some electives, and I'm realizing what I like and what I don't like, which is
Sure.
also super important, as you mentioned, because I have more flexibility in what I take in electives.
Right.
So through Kelley Connect Week, I found a passion for strategy. You know, I took a Kelley Connect Week case with Will Gagan, and he's an incredible professor. And so now I know, you know, the professor drives the experience, as well as I have a passion for strategy and business management. So I'll tailor in that regard.
Oh, that's great. Does career advising or whatever coaching and mentoring that goes along with this, does it help shape a student's curriculum after the core?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the things that's important to highlight is, and you've got a flavor of this from Divya and Michael, is all the coaches on our team, they're not just career coaches, they're actually certified executive coaches, or they're almost done with their certification to become an executive coach. And that mindset is different because it's not just about the transactions of, let's get your resume ready, let's get your mock interviews done, let's get your LinkedIn profile updated. It actually cuts to the heart of, who are you? Who do you want to be? Where do you find your state of flow when
Yeah.
you're at work? And where do you find your tension and frustration? And I think based on the answers to those questions, I mean, to listen to Michael, I mean, it's not a natural assumption for a career coach to believe that someone's going to light up around economics. But an executive coach, by definition, isn't cheering for an outcome. We're cheering for a satisfaction. And so if we notice Michael is excited about a particular area, or Divya is excited about finance, Michael's excited about economics, like that's where the push comes in, right? As he's talking about, like, I'm challenged, like, wow, I noticed that you're lighting up in this area. What does this mean to you? Why does this excite you? How can Whirlpool support you in this area? What would that look like? What keeps you from going after that? And have you brought that up with your academic advisor? Or have you considered other courses and other ways to apply this? And those questions both allow us to have better internal conversations about how to support a student, but allows the student to have better conversations with their academic advisor on their own terms and within their own company about their career plans. And frankly, I mean, companies like Rockwell, companies like Whirlpool offer opportunities to learn and grow within the firm too. And so knowing what are the right ones of those to take advantage of is just as important as what class to sign up with at Kelley. And I think from an executive coaching standpoint, you help somebody really evaluate all development opportunities at their hands rather than just, let's get you market ready, or, well, you're not leaving Whirlpool, great, we don't have to worry about your resume. That's not the point, right? I think it totally misses it. It's about how do we help you maximize your time you're in this program with all options that are available.
So let me play the role of skeptic for a moment, because I know there are a lot of people out there who are in the consideration phase, but they're drawn back by some natural skepticism about the MBA. They'll convince themselves, it's the penetration of the MBA, it's excessive, there are too many of them already, and they're fighting over too few jobs. That's one skeptical observation that a lot of people have. Another one is, I can't justify the ROI. The programs cost a lot of money, they consume a lot of time, and they're not worth it. What do you two think about that?
Well, I think it starts off with why you want to get your MBA in the first place.
Right.
So if you're looking for a piece of paper that's a diploma that says I have my MBA, then you might be right. You might not be getting the return on investment. But I don't want to speak for every MBA program, but especially with an online MBA program, you control your destiny. And the fact of the matter is that if you do the bare minimum, you're probably going to get bare minimum benefit from it, right? So if you walk into getting your MBA to say, I want to do this because I want to develop new skills, I want to build my network, and I see this as a vehicle to grow my career, then you have to use it as that vehicle and figure out how to move you from A to B.
Okay, but in your company, Michael, are MBAs prevalent? Are you surrounded by other MBAs or not?
Yeah,
you are?
there's a fair amount of MBAs
Yeah.
in Whirlpool, yeah.
Interesting. How about at Rockwell?
Am I surrounded by MBAs? Not at this time. I will say people who are in business management functions that I aspire to be in don't always have an MBA, but I think about, my future in the organization. 10, 15 years from now when I'm vying for maybe a general manager position, I
Right.
know all my competitors will have MBAs. That's just
And
the
not
nature.
to have one puts you at a disadvantage.
Puts me at a disadvantage, not only from what I'm able to share with the company, but also at a personal disadvantage to be able to secure the job.
Right.
So I'm very cognizant of that.
And Eric could speak to this, because I think an MBA, particularly from a branded program, is a signal. It's a signal to your boss, to your company, that you aspire for more, that you want a career that's really personally fulfilling, and it's filled with growth, and that you're not satisfied with where you are. Is it not?
No, I think that's exactly right. It's a signal on any number of levels. And the other thing I think about is, I think most of the students in our program aspire for some level of a general management type role, right?
Right.
They want to be a business unit leader, they want to be a country president, they want to be a C-level executive. And I think what you have to bear in mind is there's a limit to the number of actual assignments you can have that are cross-functional in nature within your firm, right? I mean, if you start in finance, you're going to do a series of finance roles and maybe a developmental opportunity in operations, maybe a relief sales role at some point in time, but 85% of your experience is going to be financial. But if you're the CEO, you're the highest level generalist within the firm, and you have to know how to talk about marketing, supply chain, human capital, like all these things matter. So if you aspire to have a general management type career path, you have to augment your corporate experience with something outside your firm that gives you the ability to have these conversations. And
Right.
from my opinion, that's an MBA. It's not a specialized master degree. Well, I have no problems with specialized masters. They're by definition focused on one area, right? It makes them special. But an MBA is not, right? And so, Michael may or may not ever do a role in human resources, but if he's had a couple classes in human capital, he at least knows the right questions to ask, right? And that's not something he's necessarily going to get from Whirlpool unless he chooses to do some shadow assignments or something. So,
Right.
yeah, I feel like it's a signal about who you are as an individual, but I think it closes a very important developmental gap for anybody who sees himself as a general manager within their firm at some point in their career.
Yeah. Common metrics for measuring ROI is what is my salary after I get the degree compared to what it was before. And that's certainly a metric that you can use. Another metric, particularly in an online or part-time or MBA program, would be did I gain increased responsibility and did my span of control over the people I manage increase? And that's another metric. But really, ROI is more than that because ROI is also knowledge that may not immediately translate into a dollar figure. And ROI comes from self-confidence that you gain by what you've learned and by trying things out and practicing with your peers in the classroom and with the faculty. Would you say that you have greater self-confidence now in yourself and your abilities than you did when you started the program?
Absolutely. So the first thing is the experience. So we talked a little bit about experiential learning. If I'm leading a team of engineers every day, I don't focus on macroeconomics, right? So by putting myself in the position to get exposure and get that type of experience, of course it builds confidence because it's helping me build a competency, right?
Right.
So I'm learning how to do economics. I'm learning if I increase the price by this much, my demand is going to decrease by this much. And at the time, as an engineering leader, that had no application. But 2 years later, I'm in a role where that's what I do every single day.
Right. Yeah, that's really true.
Yeah. Very similar on my front too. It's given me an innate confidence in my own capabilities that maybe the people around me have said that they've had, but I didn't have it in myself. I said, well, I've been a product manager, but do I really know how to price things? Do I really understand the global market space, and do I really understand microeconomic environments and things of that nature? So it's given me the confidence to know the things and really, really know them. And then secondarily, talking about graduate career services, which is almost 50% of the benefit I've gained so far from the Kelley program, it's learning from that and implementing that at Rockwell, not for myself,
Right.
but for others. People like me and Michael have a responsibility to mentor and give back to those who also have the same capabilities, have the same aspirations, but perhaps don't have the same education. So it's being able to share that and be able to actually have confidence when you mentor people. It's like, well, no, I've gotten this from an executive coach. This works. So that's been the other aspect of confidence.
The other thing is when you get an online MBA and you put it on your LinkedIn profile or your resume, you don't say online MBA because you get the same diploma that you would get in a residential program, right?
Yeah, it's Kelley MBA. I mean, Divya and Michael are Kelley MBAs, and that's how their resume will look. I think it's an important side note that corporate America has a significantly greater acceptance of the online MBA. I mean, my team 10 years ago and talking with companies was still thinking about the online MBA as being an inferior degree. And these days we walk in the room, we're like, here's a portfolio of programs, and nobody flinches. They're like, great, like we need a high caliber talent who can start in October. Yes, we will post a job for that population. The resistance isn't there anymore. So yes, the resume, the LinkedIn profile looks the same, but even if it didn't, companies aren't even hesitating. They recognize this as a deep, really resourceful pool of talent from which they'd be silly not to recruit. And in fact, so many massive organizations have students in our program that there's even internal advocacy at so many of these, Whirlpool, Rockwell, Google, take your pick, right? I mean, Procter & Gamble, they have high potential people who are in our program right now that not only benefit themselves, but continue to generate a significantly high degree of credibility in the degree itself.
So when you think of the success stories that you've seen out of Kelley Direct, what are some of the stories that immediately spring to mind?
Yeah, well, I think you're looking at two of them.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
this makes me want to buy stock in Rockwell and Whirlpool, right? I'm listening to this going, oh my gosh, like I need to call my financial advisor. But there are a few others. I mean, we talked a little bit earlier about the opportunities for career switchers. I mean, we had somebody who was a former professional tennis player who started in the Kelley Direct program and had recently taken an opportunity with a large tech firm, they'll remain nameless, on the West Coast, but was working a night shift and really wanted to get into tech consulting, in part because they wanted to work more normal hours, but also they had a value around problem solving and client implementation. And he worked with one of his coaches really hard over a span of 24 months while he was in the program. Took advantage of the Agile trips, got involved in the Kelley Direct student leadership team, did some pro bono consulting work within his community, and ultimately landed an opportunity with one of the big three, Big Seven, MBB, they all go by different acronyms, but he landed an MBB offer as a strategy consultant in large part because of the academic curriculum he picked up in Kelley Direct, the work that he was doing as an internal tech strategist with his company, and the coaching that he got here at Kelley. And I think that is not an atypical outcome for someone who's willing to really bust their chops to get there.
So that's a successful career switcher.
A successful career switch.
Now, traditionally in a two-year MBA program, you have the internship that allows an easy, well, nothing is ever easy, but it does allow more easily for a transition in a career. It's interesting that you mentioned the immersions and things because in a way, those are mini equivalents of an internship. In other words, they're experiences that you can relate to a recruiter or to a potential employer, and they're points of discussion that make you more interesting to a company, right?
Yes.
So clearly the example you just named, he used those experiences in the Kelley program as sort of a substitute to an internship to show what he learned, what he experienced, and what he got from it.
Yes.
Right?
I think that, yes, absolutely. I mean, I think, from a portfolio perspective, if you've got somebody who you would classically consider a very traditional career switcher who's making a very large transition, the in-residence program has a very high value for them because of the plethora of experiential opportunities there. Can that switcher still be successful in Kelley Direct? The answer is yes. They do have to work a little harder. But the program has been designed with the electives, with the additional MS degrees that can be taken, with the experiential learning opportunities, like Agile, and some of the club-related activities, with the class that we offer to prep for a consulting interview, which we hope is something we can replicate for somebody interested in product management or somebody interested in finance or financial engineering. There are a variety of different experiential learning opportunities in addition to work that you're willing to do on the side if that's something you want to do.
And what you just said is easy to go in one ear and out the other, but I should emphasize that anyone who wants to go and interview with a consulting firm, those are not easy interviews.
They are not easy interviews.
And they require a remarkable amount of preparation. And you need to be very quick-witted and incredibly agile, with your quant skills in particular, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a lot of behavioral questionings. There are case questions that put you in a situation and ask you what you're going to do. And so it's no easy thing to prep for an interview like that. To have that ingredient in an online MBA also is another really unusual thing.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's an unusual offering. I think it's even more unusual that it's it's built by a senior consultant at an external firm who happens to also be involved in the recruiting of MBAs. I mean, and there's no such thing as a guarantee, but I mean, this is as good as it's going to get from a prep standpoint for someone who wants to be at a consulting firm. So, and I think that speaks to the engagement level of our alumni. I think, that course is something that's offered by my department, and I think that speaks to the value that the program office and the dean suite places on professional development, that they would allow the career office to assemble coursework for students, because they get it, right? I mean, they get it. A lot of universities, I'm not picking on others, but they really feel like if you're not a PhD, you shouldn't be building a class. But I think here we recognize our students are as interested in career outcomes as academic outcomes. Maybe we ought to listen to what the career office has to say as far as prep work goes. And maybe if we want our students to take it seriously, we should have it be something, A, they pay for, which means it's credit bearing, and B, they're held accountable for doing well, which means we give grades.
Right.
And that drives a level of excellence that allows the entire system to benefit.
And I think if you talk about all these companies that have this intense customer focus, they're listening to the customer and they're developing products tailored to what people want. I think that's an example of doing just that, right? To help you prepare for what you really want to achieve.
So, Michael, what's been the most impactful course you've had in the online program?
I would probably have to say the pricing course in terms of content.
Because you immediately were able to apply it
Exactly.
and impress your boss.
Yep,
Who
but
needs to give you more than a pat on the back.
that's good.
Let's hope he's watching.
You should come back to Bangor.
You make a good coach, John.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. But the other aspect was the Kelley Connect weeks. So those were extremely impactful. Again, we talk about experiential learning.
Right.
You are immediately thrown into a real life situation. And the companies that I've had the opportunity to work with have totally opened their doors to us. They shared financial information, they shared strategic information, and they were truly grateful with any insights or ideas that we could share with them. So being able to do this crash course of, call it go-to-market strategy, call it business implementation within 6-7 days, and then months later seeing your ideas actually implemented in these companies, that's extremely impactful.
It's kind of like speed dating.
Yeah.
So tell us about your live case that you experienced in Kelley Connect. What
Sure.
did it involve?
Sure. So my first Kelley Connect case was with Blooming Foods, which is a local co-op grocery store right here in Bloomington. And
They were worried about Whole Foods moving in, right?
You've done your homework, yeah. Yep. So they were worried about Whole Foods moving in. They're an organic co-op grocery store. So with Whole Foods coming in, they're going to be competing for share of wallet of the same customer. So we basically evaluated the fact base of their current state. And that's where I was saying, we had the opportunity to go to their stores and look on their shelves and touch their products and interact with their team and their customers. We also had the opportunity to look at their financials and understand, what products were driving their profit,
Sure.
what products were driving their volume, and things like that. And that helped us recognize what their strengths and weaknesses were, how we could capitalize on their strengths, and how we can improve their weaknesses.
And then you had to present to the team, right?
Right. So, so initially we presented to a team of professors here at Kelley, and then if you were selected to move on, you presented to the leadership team of Blooming Foods.
Right.
And they they would select the best ideas that rose to the top, and you either won or you lost.
So, Michael, did you get present to the management?
I did, and we were very
All right,
fortunate.
all
We
right.
were very fortunate to win.
Cool.
So
That's
Yeah.
very impressive.
They were so good, they scared Whole Foods from even coming into the market.
that's right.
Good job.
They heard about us.
Divya, what was your live case on?
So my live case, in the most recent case, was Happy Horizons Trust. They're a nonprofit organization located in India with a very altruistic cause of providing education to young girls in the state of Bihar, which has a heartbreaking illiteracy rate, and particularly heartbreaking percentage of young girls married off very early and never having the opportunity to meet their potential.
Right.
So we helped that organization's CEO, Kshitij, who was in town with us for a solid week,
Wow.
with a strategy to essentially get more money.
Impressive.
Yes.
Now, one part of a residential program is recruiters come and they interview people.
Yes.
In an online environment, that can't really happen. So is there a similar equivalent to that in the online space, or how do you make that work? Now, and I do know that most of the students, obviously, including Michael and Divya, are wanting to enhance their abilities within the companies they're in. So that doesn't apply to them, but it may apply to a career switcher, right?
It may. We have, I think the way that we think about this is, and Michael said it well, we think about the customer needs first, and then we worry about the process second. We do have national employment outcomes and national relationships that we target. Our students in our online program are spread all around the country. So if I've got somebody who's in San Francisco who really wants to stay on the West Coast between the Bay Area and, say, Portland, our job is to facilitate corporate opportunities there from a recruiting standpoint, which can exist either from our internal corporate relations team and leveraging existing relationships, so companies like Amazon, Microsoft, NetApp, take your pick, or our business development team, and specifically our rep in Los Angeles, who would go out and find new relationships for us. Those opportunities get posted on a job board that our students have access to. Their coaches are alerted to the fact these jobs are now available. The coaches work directly with the students to make sure that they apply for those. We batch the resumes and provide them to the companies, and then the companies choose to interview the students. They'll do phone interviews, Zoom interviews. They could even do in-person interviews if somebody
Right.
who's a Portland-based student interviews with a Portland-based company. We facilitate all of that. And the good news is neither of them has to travel to Bloomington in order to make that happen. So we really try to make this work where the students and where the employers are at. Does that preclude an online student from coming to Bloomington to interview with a company who's on campus? Absolutely not, for the right situation. Had, say, Divya decided, I really want to make a move into finance. I'm very interested in leaving Rockwell. I noticed that Microsoft has a finance role available and I'd like to make myself eligible. We have a process to help her do that. And she can take advantage of that. I think that happens rarely because in most situations, folks they like where they live. They'd like to generally stay where they live, or they are operating on a timeline that's different than on-campus recruiting for an in-residence program. So,
Right.
They have an interview that needs to take place in February. The company's not going to come to Bloomington to talk to one or two students, right? So
Right.
we facilitate that on their terms and their location.
Sure.
So, yeah, so the answer is yes. We make sure those corporate relationships and corporate interactions occur. Bloomington is there if need be, but usually it just doesn't. It's not the right approach.
So I know out there's people wondering, what about the network, right? A lot of people think you get an MBA and you immediately inherit a network that you carry with you throughout your professional career, and that you can rely upon for support and assistance throughout your life. Do you get a network in an online MBA program? Because that's part of career outcomes as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no question about it.
How does that happen?
It's not a default, although I will say that if Michael or Divya were to have their mug with them at the Indianapolis airport later today, I promise you that there would be people who would come up and say, hey, I'm a Kelley. Like, it happens. So you do inherit that brand. That brand has some recognition, and at some point you'll have to ask our dean. Heidi Kesner's got a great story about how her Kelley backpack saved her at a pizza joint when she was visiting Whirlpool.
Really?
She was in Benton Harbor, St. Joe's, at the train station. I said airport. She was at the train station, stranded without a car. She was wearing a Kelley backpack, and a former student saw her at line, desperately trying to find a cab, and drove her to the hotel where she needed to be. And that connection was facilitated by the brand of Kelley. So I think the idea of Kelley's helping Kelley's and that brand is it's like Harley Davidson, right? We wear this with pride. It's like a tattoo. You get that by coming to Kelley. In addition, though, I think that the size of the program is large enough for you to have a couple of hundred classmates, but small enough that you get to know your classmates, especially because of the in-residence weeks. So I don't want to speak for Michael and Divya, but my guess would be they already have pretty good relationships with their classmates, which doesn't always happen in an online program because
Right.
there's teamwork. There are the experiential learning projects which people get involved in. The in-residence weeks facilitate a lot of that. So there is a natural relationship build that happens. In addition, we've talked about how our office engages recruiters who are typically alumni and engages alumni, talking about the receptions that we're running this summer. And all of that is a proactive and very intentional way to help our Kelley Direct students build a network, but also help our alumni and other portfolio students expand their network. And
Right.
that's an intentional effort that we try to put forward. So I think that there's a sort of a byproduct of being here as well as the result of the intentional effort, you bet.
So now, do you two feel that? Michael, do you think you're graduating into a greater network of people who will support you and who you can call on a whim?
Absolutely. So I definitely feel like a Kelley, and I know that the resources that the school has are my resources as well, right? So if I can, if something ever happened and I needed to take advantage of that, I know that I could give Eric a call or Stephanie a call, and they would be.
Oh, you can definitely give him a call.
Yeah, yeah.
You can call me anytime.
Yeah.
Email's a little sketchy. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You bet.
No, but with respect to building a network with my peers, Kelley Connect Week is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fascinating to get this group of people together who are just starting their MBAs, and nobody knows each other. And then when you go through the adversity that is Kelley Connect Week, you form bonds with those people because you go through it together.
It's got to be something of a boot camp, otherwise that doesn't happen.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Right?
Kind
Well,
of.
those cases, I mean, the two cases they're talking about, those are, I mean, Blooming Foods, I can speak to that. I mean, they're fighting for their survival. Like, the
Right.
stakes of those cases are high. I mean, our interview rooms and the breakout rooms during Connect Week, I mean, our student teams are in those early in the morning and late at night. They are working hard together. And I think that stress, it creates an environment where people can get to know. I mean, there are always dynamics that take place with that. But I mean, when the week is over, I mean, there's a real bond. It's not just like, yeah, we cracked a bunch of wine, had some appetizers. I mean, like, we accomplished something together, and that's a different level of relationship that I think is really meaningful.
So then that next week, when
Yeah.
you're in class with all these people, there's that level of trust there.
Yeah.
So that when you have to do a group assignment, you might recognize a lot of people on the roster and say, hey, this is, let's tackle this one together, and then try it with somebody different next time. And then when you come back for the second Kelley Connect Week, you have all these experiences of group work throughout courses that you've taken over the past couple of years, and you get to meet those people in person. So it really comes full circle, and the network is real.
Okay, I want to end the panel the way I ended the previous two panels. Your advice to your former self when you were considering whether or not to do an MBA. What advice do you have?
For myself?
Well,
looking-
it's from your former self, so it would be to other would-be applicants today.
That is a beautiful question. I would say network as much as you can. It's such an overloaded or overused term, but what I mean is, you might have meaningful connections with a few people, but each of those people maybe know 6 other people that could give you advice. Maybe one person, in my case, went to Kelley and could, enable a connection for me to help me understand what I would get out of Kelley. And
Right.
similarly, somebody else could make a connection for me to a different program, maybe an Ivy League, maybe an in-residence program. So learn as much as you can from people so that you can prevent yourself from making a mission-critical mistake
Right.
in the program that you choose. So I think be very intentional about the meaningful relationships you have and how you utilize their insight.
Informed choice.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the guess, right? That's what you want to do.
Yes.
Make a really informed choice for yourself. What about rankings, Michael? Did you consult rankings?
Absolutely. So
We should point out that Kelley was recently ranked first by U.S. News,
right.
the Kelley Direct program.
Right, and so reputation is a very big thing, and Schools like Kelley get that reputation for a reason because they've produced results. And so it absolutely went into my decision, and I'm happy to say I haven't been led astray.
There you go.
Yeah.
Eric, last words.
Yeah, you said it, informed choice. I mean, from my seat, I'm really proud of what we've done in career services. As a Kelley, I'm proud of what the program office has done, and I would say whether you're a career navigator or a career switcher, I invite you to compare my office and our program to all the other ones that are out there. And I think you're going to like what you see at Kelley the best. I think we're doing this as well as it can possibly be done right now. And even at that, I think we can keep doing it better and better going forward. So shop around, and then, I think you're going to like what you see here at Kelley.
All right. Eric, thank you. Divya, thank you very much. Michael, good luck to you. Divya as well. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. So that concludes our 3-panel extravaganza today on the online MBA experience. If you have any interest at all in an online program, watch through. These segments will be produced and archived on our site, so you can go back and refer to them. And kind of like taking the Kelley program, you don't have to do it all at once. You can spread it out for yourself. Remember, our first panel was about whether or not an online option is good for you. Our second panel really dove deep into the actual online MBA experience. And here, as you just found out, we focused largely on career outcomes. So this is John Byrne signing off for now from the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University. Thanks for watching.